if you go back to 2015, I'm the football manager at West Adelaide Football Club, and we've just won the premiership, which Westies hadn't done for 32 years. I was probably feeling pretty indestructible as a person. You know, I was on top of the world. How good can this be? You know, 5 players from West Adelaide, 5, maybe 6 players from West Adelaide got drafted that year to play into the AFL, which is a massive achievement. So I was almost thinking, well, will I go to Port Adelaide or will I go to Adelaide? You know, or will I stay in you know, because things were starting to roll out and I was thinking that things were really good. So things started to get really tough in 2016. And I'm going to use football as a bit of an analogy there. Like Westies started losing, I reckon since the 2015 premiership I finished work there in 19, they won maybe, if they were lucky, they won 6 games over those years, which made life really, really tough. And then your dream of working for whichever AFL club it was going to be disappears. People start blaming you, and then things go on social media about how bad you are. And towards 2017, I had a big relationship breakup, which was really, wasn't really pleasant. You're getting knocked at work about your professional ability, how well you're going, and the results from a football point of view, the results on the scoreboard are showing that Westies are getting thumped every week. So it must be the football manager's fault, or partly his fault. So you start believing that, and it becomes your whole identity, becomes your whole life. At the end of 2017, I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Hackham West. And I can remember driving down the Southern Expressway back towards Hackham for the night. And I was doing some pretty incredible speeds. And if it wasn't for my brother answering the call that night, we may not be here, mate. So I then went to Noarlunga Hospital. He encouraged me to go to Noarlunga Hospital. My brother lives in Victor Harbor, met me at Noarlunga Hospital. I was then admitted for, I'm going to say a week, maybe less. And then they took me around the corner to a thing called the ICC. And I wondered what the International Cricket Council had to do with mental health. But the ICC stands for Intermediate Community Care. And I was in there for a couple of days and I thought, you know, it was coming to Christmas and I thought, I don't want to be in there for Christmas, I want to be out. So I signed myself out. Had a very, very close friend from the Riverland who was dying of cancer, and she eventually passed away. I think it was May of that year, and I ended up in Glenside for a week. Pretty darn scary when you go to that place, really scary. Because unfortunately, I guess I was having those really, really bad thoughts. And I was in Margaret Tobin for about a week, and then they transferred me back to the International Cricket Council, which is intermediate community care. But I was there for 4 weeks. It was a pretty lonely place because you're in this room, white walls, almost everything you imagine the movies. It's almost like that. I had some really close friends that would call and keep in touch with me. A lot of friends would visit. My brother would come from Victor Harbor. My daughter Amy was absolutely incredible. I remember her lying on the bed with me one night, just hugging me and just giving me a sense of purpose. And yeah, that was a real tough part, is when you don't feel as though you've got any purpose, when you don't have any sense of belonging. So work was going really badly. Relationship, I was on my own realistically. And I thought, well, what's the point? You know, I was in my late 40s. What's the point? Had some really, really bad thoughts and really bad situations. And I was quite angry with life as well. And I remember my dear mum ringing me and saying, you know, that she'd been praying for me. And I said to her, Mum, don't bother. There's no point. You know, what's it really matter? Look at me. But to Mum's credit, she kept praying, and to, I guess, my daughter's credit, that she kept praying as well. And then one day I had this social worker come and visit me at Noarlunga, and the social worker suggested that I get in touch with Anglicare. And I got a feeling that was the day that things started to change for me, that all of a sudden I found some hope. And to me, it's no coincidence that Anglicare are a Christian organisation. You know, they begin from their time with the Anglican Church. So I bought a house or an apartment up here at Tennyson. One of my good mates is the legend of Gateway Baptist Church, of course, is Huts. And Huts and I have known each other we've known each other for 31 years. We've probably never been as close in those 31 years as we are now, but he was one of the people that kept in touch. And when he found out I was moving to Tennyson, he asked me to come along to church here. But I think that was the day I started to get my identity back. I remember having a massive chat with Jeremy about how lonely I was feeling and how bad things were. And he pointed out to me that in a relationship, how can you be in a relationship where there isn't any grace? And unfortunately, I was in a relationship where there perhaps in hindsight wasn't a lot of grace. This particular Christmas, I was watching the cricket and I was crying my eyes out. Not because of how badly Australia were playing, I was just crying my eyes out. Lonely and all this, and the next minute the phone rings and it says it was David Hutton. And you look at it and you think, oh, I can't let him know that I'm crying. But we started chatting and eventually I just said to him, mate, you don't know how timely your phone call is. And he said, oh, it's just, I'm just in between going from Morgan, packing up and then going down to Port Elliot. And I said, mate, I've just spent the last hour or so crying my eyes out. So you've actually got me out of that routine. So sometimes you wonder, should I call? And whether your phone call is making any difference. Well, I can guarantee you that your phone call is making a lot of difference. So too is your text messages, so too are your invites for tea and all that kind of stuff. I ended up joining Christian Connection, and that's the Tinder for Christians. But you don't swipe left or right, you wave. Eventually I waved to Karen and we started to chat. Frank Perotta's got a lot to answer for this because Frank and Marie ironically worked out that they lived across the road from me, and then they were amazing because they would then check up on me, whether it was a phone call, then Frank rang me up and he said he wanted to go and see Julian play at the Federal Hotel in Semaphore. And he was supposed to pick me up at a certain time, but he was so late. But while he was that late, I was actually messaging Karen back and forth on Facebook Messenger. And that was probably a night that the reason Frank was late gave me an excuse to talk to Karen more. And we probably realised that there were a few connections. Grace is the most amazing thing. And if you are willing to forgive, if you're willing to give God another go, if you're willing to give people another go, particularly if they have the same faith journey or faith pathway that you have, who knows what could happen. And I think, the fact that Karen and I are now married and, our wedding was here 18 months ago was I've had a number of people come to me and say that's the best wedding I've ever been to. So we just made sure we had fun. And it's just so good that we're equally yoked. And the most important part about our relationship is that we have grace. And Jeremy's 100% right that you cannot have a relationship without grace. As a result of that journey, I've done some things that I hope would show some grace. Well, I've spent some time at West Care Centre with homeless people and just sat and listened to their story, because when you sit there and listen to their story, you actually think, far out. But by the grace of God, that is not me. And makes you realise how valuable life is, how precious life is, how precious you are in God's sight. And mate, life's not easy. It's not easy at all, but it's just the fact that you know that God's there helping you, supporting you, caring for you, has your best interest at heart. And now I'm back being a school teacher that I was for 21 years previous to work, and I'm absolutely loving it. I haven't got a full-time, I've got a contract at the moment, which is just awesome. The opportunity that God's given me to work at a really nice little school just around the corner at Woodville Primary and hopefully have some influence. Feeling the love, feeling the connections. And yeah, Gateway has a massive role to be grateful for that, Huts, Tonya, and just unbelievable friends that I know will call me, will text me, will see how I'm going. And my identity is on who I am, not what I am. You've got to have your faith and trust in God, and you can't perhaps rely on some of the plans that you have because God's got other ideas.